All right, well, I think we'll get started here. So great to see so many faces. Just wanted to let everybody know that this is going to be recorded. I'll probably throw it up on YouTube for anybody that wasn't able to make the gathering here. Just so you know, I'd love for you to keep your screens on so that your video on so we can see you. Feel free to speak in, ask questions, use the chat. That would be great. But just know that you will be probably on YouTube, but, be brave, okay? Be brave. Just going to hand it over to Diane to get things started, and then I will introduce myself afterwards.
Okay, well, we're just absolutely thrilled to have you here, Sean. I've been following your work online, mainly on Twitter, actually, and the different connections that you have globally and here in Ottawa with people like Rola Tibshirani, who talked to us a couple of weeks ago. And it's just really, we feel so fortunate to have you. So thank you so much, first of all, for taking time out of your schedule to be here with us this evening. And I would just like to introduce Sean to anybody who might not know him yet. He is an educator from Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. And he has a passion for local and global connections. He created the connections-based learning, which is an approach to teaching and learning that leverages the connected world. Sean's students, and I believe it's high school, I can't recall what grade you have, Sean.
Grade nines.
Grade nines, yeah. Participated in a lot of real world endeavors, including collaborating with students in Uganda to create solar powered computers to deliver 3D printed solar lanterns and to battle light poverty in the Dominican Republic. Sean is a founding Teach SDGs ambassador, igniting students around the globe to take action to meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. He also received the Premier's Award for Excellence in Education for his work in the area of technology and innovation, and that was just in October 2018. And he was Global Teacher Prize Top 50 finalists just a year ago in 2019. Sean has published 2 books so far. The first is Connections-Based Learning, which is the framework for teaching and learning in a connected world that he's developed. And his more recent publication that some of you have read is entitled The Connection Lens, and it shifts onto the power of human connection. And so I will stop and let Sean take over.
All right, thanks, Diane. I'm delighted to have uOttawa students here, the Global Education Cohort, plus some teacher candidates, some other students from uOttawa. It's fantastic. I love these opportunities to connect. And what I want you to experience is to get out of this as much as you can. Now, if that means asking a question, be brave, ask a question. If that means, saying something or contributing something else, please do it. I tried to get some pre-approach, some prior knowledge information, and I sent out to Diane, and I hope that some of you were able to get to it. But I sent out a poll everywhere, just saying, hey, what would you like? What kind of details would you like Sean to fill in? And I got some information there. If I don't hit your particular question, your thought, please just chime in. I really want to make good use of the hour that we have together, and I want it to be beneficial for you. So whatever you can take out of this, whatever you can, glean, whatever's going to help your teaching practice, that is, that's my main concern. Now, I'm going to share my screen just a little bit here to just guide us in our talk. So here it is. And I've got one of the things that people asked was about really seeing what connections-based learning looks like in the classroom. So I've focused on that quite a bit. But sometimes it's tough to talk about yourself And as opposed to me sharing a little bit about myself, I just thought I'd throw up my eHarmony profile so that you can read that. So you can just take a look at, my profile there, and so you can get, get an idea of who you're dealing with. Okay, maybe, not exactly what you were expecting. This is probably more what you were expecting. Yes, my name is Sean Robinson, and I call myself an elementary trained middle school teacher that happens to be teaching high school. So I was trained in elementary, I was trained in early numeracy. My first class was a K-1-2 split. I worked in elementary for a few years. Actually, I worked in Indonesia for a couple of years as well. And then I moved on to middle school, spent 10 years teaching middle school, loved middle school, a lot of energy that was needed there. And now I've moved into high school. So many really cool possibilities with high school students. So wherever you're planning to land, I've probably taught that kind of a class. I'm actually working to teach adults in our school districts as well. Currently, I'm teaching science and digital literacy. So it's just junior sciences, so Science 9, Science 10, and then also we have a great digital literacy program here that I would love to share about, but I don't think we'll have time for that. Wrote a few books. Love it if you put any kind of questions, any thoughts on Instagram or Twitter. I use Twitter. I used to use it a lot more. I don't use it as much, but please, if you can tweet something out, tweet a question, tweet a thought, add me, add my handle. You can also add hashtag ConnectionLens. And I am very aware that we all come to this gathering from many different perspectives. And I really like this Wab Canoe quote. And it typifies the way that I approach coming here as we, the 40 of us are spending time together here. I come to you humbly, not to tell you what to do on your journey, but to share with you what I have learned on mine. And Wab Canoe, an indigenous activist, a hip hop artist, an MLA. So yeah, that's the way I'm approaching this, is that I want to share my journey, and I hope that you can see how our journeys will interact. And I do want this to be quite interactive. Just to get to know who I am, my mission is to make the educational landscape a more connected place. From my years teaching, that is how I've been able to find meaning in what I've been doing. I've really found that when I allow my students to connect with a human being, when we teach with connection in mind, and when we have a connection lens, it makes it for a more meaningful experience for my students and myself. It allows them to have more meaning, but also to have more motivation and to get a chance to make a difference as well. If my journey and your journey somehow align and you say, hey, you know what, I'm kind of into what's going on here, there's a couple of ways that you can help me. And I wanted to get this out right at the get-go, because when we get close to the end, I won't remember, to talk about any of this. But the first thing is to continue your learning. There are a couple of books that I have here. So a lot of you have read The Connection Lens. There's also the Connections-Based Learning book, which is an even greater look at the idea of CBL, connections-based learning. Also, share what you're learning. If you're looking for a book to use as a book club, consider the Connection Lens, consider connections-based learning. And then finally, I need some reviews on Amazon. So if at all possible, you could help me from not just having my dad on there as a review. This would be good, so please consider that, if you've snagged it from Amazon and you can put a review in there, that would be wonderful. It would help out my mission as well. Now I want everybody to Take a cleansing breath. I know that about half of adults are not present in the moments that they have. So I want you to try to be present. And I want you to think about a time when you first looked at some student learning outcomes that you were about to teach. And hopefully that can frame your time here, is to think about that time where I've got some learning outcomes, I've got some students coming, and how do I put these together? So my learning intention here is to deepen your understanding of connection-based learning and to help you apply it into class. But I am very aware that you come with learning intentions as well. And I mentioned that I sent out that poll everywhere poll, and this is what I got back. So your learning intention so far, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to deepen the conversation around learning intentions. What does connections-based learning look like? What does decentralized education mean to you? Which I'd love to talk about. The do's and don'ts of creating a great classroom library. I'm just going to get that one out of the way just right now. If anybody has read Jim Trelease's Read Aloud Handbook, it talks about that. It talks about how when you're building this classroom library, it's creating an environment that is rich with literature, literature that gets used. I had a great conversation with my teacher librarian here at Riverside, and we were just talking about having, books around all varieties, right? Let's not get hung up, oh, it's a graphic novel, oh, it's Captain Underpants, that kind of stuff, but really just making that literature-rich environment, and then books that are used as well. So make sure that they're not just sitting there on the shelf. That's all I got to say about that, because I'm more focused on connections and how to balance a school that's focused on standardized standardized tests and scores with connections-based learning. I'm actually going to defer to this book as well. So this is Transforming School Culture by Anthony Muhammad. And this is a great book that can talk about that question. He breaks the teachers into 4 groups: the believers, the tweeners, the survivors, and the fundamentalists. And he would say that the fundamentalists are the biggest obstacle to change. And he has some great ideas around that, transforming our schools. And really, it's all about the culture. So my answer to that question is building the culture. And when we're dealing with the fundamentalists who are really stuck in what they're doing, we do not want to come at it with an emotional reasoning, but more a very factual-based reasoning, and that will help you with that. So I wanted to get those 2 questions out of the way. We can talk a little bit more about decentralized education and also definitely connections-based learning. Now, I've been talking quite a lot, and I do want to open this up, and I bet you've had a lot of different dialogues and discussions in your classes over the time. Those people who have read the book, I'd love to hear an answer to this question. So I'm opening it up, and let's all be kind to one another and listen to each other and not speak over one another. But after reading the connection lens, what questions did the text unearth? All right. So I'm just going to bring us back here so that we're all together. I'd love to hear what kind of questions you had as you were reading. Maybe you're still in the middle of reading it and you haven't finished it yet. But what kinds of things have come out for you? And be brave. Make sure you introduce yourself. Let me know who you are.
Can I ask a question, Sean?
Sure.
I'm hogging the time. I just wanted, you know, I know, I just wondered as like for somebody this is completely new, you know, like it all makes sense in the books. What would you, I just want to know what advice you would have, like for a complete newbie, you know, how do we get started? And I mean, that's in the book, but if you could just sort of give us a direct answer to that, that would be really interesting, I think.
Yeah, my answer to that, because it's a lens shift. So my answer to that is to just start focusing on the who. And we're going to go through some activities today to get us focused on the who. But and when I say the who, I'm really asking the question, who can we engage as we learn? That's the question. Looking at a learning outcome and thinking, who can we engage as we're trying to explore this learning outcome with our students? I think that would be, you know, that's the start. And then it starts to snowball. You might say, well, hey, Robinson, I don't have a lot of resources here. I'm going to show you some resources. You might say, well, I, you know, don't really know how to do this with my students. Well, let's just focus on the who first. Sometimes the students just run with it and they take it. So having it all figured out is not what I'm going to be talking about today, but more just changing your lens. Thus the name of the book, The Connection Lens. Thanks, Diane. That's great. Any others? I would love to hear. Just, you know what? If you even haven't read the book, Roman Alexander. To everyone, still working my way through. What was your best favorite strategy to build, let me just check it out here, build such long distance connections? Were they initiated by yourself or by the students? Okay, Roman, that is a great question. One of my earlier connections was with Poland. I think it's in the first book that I talk about it. Matthias's uncle. It was a connection that I did not set up. All I did was say, hey, as we look at energy production, who can we connect with? And Matthias said, well, my uncle is involved in energy production in Poland. Can we connect with him? And thus a great connection that we had. So I would say my strategy, and I talk about this in the book, but it's really helping the students to form those connections, for them to consider what possible connections they can bring to the class. And that's the most delightful for me. When I'm bringing the connections to the class, it can be great, but when my students are drawing people in saying, oh, well, you know, my neighbor has helped me with electricity before, maybe they could, you know, help me with this project. I'm just over the moon. Yeah, so that would be my answer to that. Debbie, do you have something?
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
I'm listening to you, and I've been teaching special education for 15 years now, and the focus on the who is essential. It's like in special ed, we have to look at the student who's in front of us, and we have to go with his strengths and his needs, or her.
Yep.
It's mostly his, but in any case, and we have to, you know, build on that. So I was just wondering your experience with special education and how this ties in, and because I found, you know, cognitive intelligence sometimes is not obvious in these students, but they have so many other skills that we can tap into. So I was just wondering, you know, in terms of special education, because that's my passion. Like I'm doing my master's right now, and I find that there's very limited courses on special ed. So if you can speak to inclusion and I mean, it's a very big subject right now, but that's my passion. So just wondering about that.
Sure. Several things came out when you were talking about that. I do talk about, I think in the Connection Lens, talk about my work with special needs students. And I was a team leader for our student services department. So I have worked somewhat with kids who are working on certain skills and kids in special ed programs. One of the things, actually, there's two things that came out in my mind when you were talking. First, about knowing the kid, I just want to affirm that, and how important it is when we're making decisions around a student, how important it is to really understand the student. So that's the first connection. That's the primary connection, is the teacher-student connection. And really, when we do understand the student and we know the student, then the decision-making around that student becomes more powerful. Second thought that I had is when we do integration and inclusion, we have like a huge range of students in the class, then this idea of decentralized learning and decentralized education comes into play. And maybe this will be an opportunity for me to talk a little bit about that, because there's a macro understanding of decentralized education, and then a micro one. The macro one, we talk about schools of choice, and we talk, these are conversations that might happen in at a district level. But the micro concept of decentralized education is really giving that student voice and choice, and opening up the student to a lot of possibilities. When we do that, when our projects allow for quite a range of possibilities with our students, where it's not even just the way that they demonstrate their learning, but the way that they're acquiring their learning, how they chime into this, the connection, maybe even, that you give these students, then it just opens the door, like it sets an equal playing ground, because you're not saying, no, it has to be this or it has to be this, but you're really just opening it up for kids to chime in at that different level that they're at. So I believe that when we make those connections and we jump off the connection, and we see our education more as a response to the connection, then that allows our students, wherever they are at, to have a meaningful experience.
I agree, and it's all tied into evaluation as well, and standardized evaluation, and how my kids just don't fit that typical, of course they're not going to do well on standardized evaluations, but they do well on so many other things. So why can't we value what they're doing well? So
Yes.
Towards evaluating the progress of the student instead of the final result. So that's what I'm examining right now in my master's studies. Thank you so much, Sean.
Thanks, Debbie. That's awesome. Great question. Some other questions, some other thoughts when you were reading, or even just as you're coming to this? Yeah. Hi, Bo. Right. Well, Bo, have you in South Korea, have you found your tribe? Do you have a few co-conspirators there that you can bounce ideas off and maybe do some team teaching and work together? Or do you feel like you are on your own? Yeah, just expats or whatever. Just yeah. And do you find that they're struggling with the same things, that they're trying to do maybe some progressive ideas, and then they get a lot of pushback? Right. Okay. So it sounds like you've got, there's a systematic issue that you're working through. I'm just going to say start small. Try to incorporate something, because I talk about the idea of a connection lens, it's a way of seeing your curriculum. So it's not that you have to include this or include this, but just see, okay, hey, we're working towards this standardized test, or, whatever. We've got, our curriculum A, B, and C. And yet, today we're going to establish our curriculum. We're going to take strides on our curriculum through this kind of thing. Now, I'm hoping that I get to the expert learning, because that might be something that your learners in Korea, and the parents as well, and getting them on board is a huge part of it, would be excited about. So if I don't get there, it's our connection that we had with a stem cell researcher. I mean, what, parent who, wants their student or their child to really be successful, leaps and bounds would say, no, you can't, we don't want you to talk with any stem cell researcher. We want just the book. Maybe, something like that. Yeah. Well, you got your work cut out for you. And, but the idea of a tribe, because this is, we're thinking in a sense of a global world, you're not alone, right? So you've got your compatriots all around you right here that can help you, and you can bounce ideas off them. The worst is when you feel like, okay, well, I am siloed. I am all on my own. How am I going to do this? But you're not, because you're connected. Yeah. I just saw somebody say, is it possible to repeat the question Bo is asking? We can't hear him. Yeah, so Bo was asking, I'll just say it. Bo was asking about, can you hear me? Okay, I see it, yeah. He was asking, or really just telling us about his experience in South Korea and how, because of the focus on standardized testing, it's very difficult to use some more progressive kind of teaching practices. So that was the question. Hey folks, I am going to share my screen one more time. I've got a second question that I want to give to you. So the dialogue will continue. So here's another question for you to consider. So as I made my case for leveraging connection in the classroom in the connection lens, what parts of your practice did it cause you to consider? So now I'm kind of turning it back to you. What parts of your practice did you have to take a better look at? Basically, I'm opening it up, whatever you would like to say, but just adding that element to it. What have you been looking back and looking at your own practice and reflecting on some changes?
I'm just wondering, I guess, Bo raised a really important point, I think, and it's something that I would think about as well if I were going to do something like this, internationally, which would be what I would like to try, would be that, intercultural negotiation that goes on. Because I think it has to be a two-way street, right? I mean, it's not just about us saying, okay, we're going to tell you how we're doing this, right? I know when you're in Uganda and places like that, I'm just interested, maybe it will help Bo as well, a little bit about how that, that negotiation works, because to me, that would be kind of the scary part of it. I'm not scared of other people or anything like that, but I would be more scared about, especially if you're working with the Western country and a non-Western country, how you would negotiate, how to proceed.
Yeah, that is great. I love that. It reminds me of an experience that I had with my students where we had made the connection with Uganda, and my students were brainstorming ideas about how to respond to the connection. And the students put these ideas on their public digital portfolios, and then we asked the students in Uganda to comment on them. And it was a real eye-opener to think, well, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to help. This is what we think you need. And to come back and say, oh, whoa, okay, this is not, what we think we want to do. We're not going to do that. We're going to have to shift. We're going to have to work together. So that idea of negotiation is good. It's something that as educators and global educators, we've got to get used to. It's a bit of a dance. We've got to, check our ideas, and really a notion of self-awareness is very important, right? How am I looking at this, and how am I coming across? And oh my gosh, is that what I think? So that reflection on how we're coming across and really listening to our learning partners is definitely a huge thing when we think about connection-based learning.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, well, not reflecting on practice, but as a student, I did 3 years of my high school in Iran, and it was a very like didactic, this is a textbook, you got to do this, there are exams coming up and you don't have much time. And then in grade 12, you have to study all the things you did in grade 10, 11, and 12 to prepare for the exam, national exam for university. And one of the problems, like I feel like this would be a little harder to achieve in high school where you're preparing for university. Not that it's impossible, but with the time constraints. And this was brought up in one of my master's classes that I was taking at Ottawa U, that some high school teachers thought that time constraints would be a problem because there's a curriculum to follow. And no matter how we try to get creative, at the end of the day, we do need to cover, and I know that there's different ways to cover the same thing, of course. You can get as creative as possible, but when something is time consuming, I'm just wondering how it would be possible to take that into account.
Well, I think you've answered a little bit of your own question, because we can address these learning outcomes in a very creative way. And you know, do we think that a PowerPoint, a video, and a test will really get true deep learning, right? Like if somebody is saying, hey, we're cramped, all we have time for is, you know, lecture test, lecture test, lecture test, lecture test. I would say, you know, why don't we test those students, you know, like maybe a couple of days after your test, because they won't remember anything. And so I usually have a bit of pushback on the time constraints. Obviously, we have to, you know, consider how much time we have, but I am really looking at going in depth with the learning outcomes. And you'll see, Fatima, as I, you know, share a little bit of my journey, that it's very learning outcome oriented. It just might be a different way of approaching.
Of course. It's just that when tests are standardized, and right. I'm not pro standardized testing at all. I'm just really curious as how this can be potentially implemented into the system that will, at the end of the day, have to prepare students for the stupid standardized tests anyways, right. And at a specific time, you know?
Yeah.
So it would be wonderful if that could potentially be achieved, but when the questions are like multiple choice questions at the end of, like, I don't remember any of the things I learned in high school in Iran, right? The things I do remember were the things I learned here in Canada, right? In that 1 year. And it would be nice to see that happen. It sucks that it's, you know,
yeah.
Standardized testing is still there.
Well, and we've seen some changes. We've seen changes in British Columbia. We have a redesigned curriculum here. You've probably seen a lot of changes in, well, Ontario. Ontario, I've been watching, and you've got a bit of a pendulum swinging with, you know, back to the basics and whatnot. But we're part of a bit of an educational revolution. And you'll find that my connections with the Global Teacher Prize ambassadors, that progressive education is in the heart, well, meaningful education, if I can say, not progressive for progressive's sake, but meaningful education is in the heart of these top educators around the world. And so things are coming, but change definitely is slow. Like it's not going to happen overnight. Awesome thought. I'm going to keep on moving because I want to truck along and share just a few ideas with you. Hopefully these ideas will hit some of the other things that, some of the other questions that you have. So I frame this revisioning in something I call the revisioning cycle. And it's an opportunity for you to use the cycles that we have in education to develop a different way of seeing your curriculum. I call it the revisioning cycle. So we're working around this cycle, and we're using this cycle to be able to help our students gain a connection lens for our own selves to develop this idea of a connection lens. And it starts with rethinking. Now, nobody asked about research. I thought that you might ask in the poll everywhere. I just wanted to include a couple of studies. I like to start off with research because some people are saying, might come at this saying, well, hey, Robinson, what about the research? You may be familiar with this study, What Did You Do in School Today? It's a Canadian study. And our redesigned curriculum here in British Columbia is based a lot on what they found in this study. It was a very interesting study because they found a way to gauge student engagement. And they looked at many schools from many districts. And what they found was that basically they found that students are not engaged, right? Very few students are engaged, particularly in high school. There's a dearth of engagement. And in order to engage, there are these very connections-based learning recommendations here, these very connected recommendations. Students need to see how subjects are interconnected. They need to feel respected. They need to be working on real problems, connecting with the community, knowing that their work makes a difference, and having dialogue with community members, with experts, and with each other about learning. So, some quotes here, that the work students do needs to be relevant, all right? Authentic. Effective teaching requires thoughtful learning activities that include opportunities where students are connected to the world outside the classroom. Students want stronger relationships with their teachers, with each other, and with their communities, locally, provincially, nationally, globally. They want teachers to know them as people. There's another study, and this is a more recent study, 2016. It's from Krutka and Carano, and they looked at the scholarly literature around video conferencing in particular. Now, with connections-based learning, it's not all about video conferencing, but a lot of times it has this connection between a place that the only way that we can connect is through some kind of video conference, whether it's synchronous or maybe even asynchronous. And what they found is that when students are in a video conference, it awakens their ideas about the world, it awakens their place within the world, and it helps them to see their responsibility for the world. And what they came to say is whether we aim to address concerns, reduce prejudice, or pursue specific projects to make a better world, video conferencing can transcend geographic boundaries and provide an impetus for action. It's really a passport around the world, opening students' eyes to their place in it and their responsibility to care for the world. Just two quick studies. Both books have a lot more of the research, but if you were coming here saying, whoa, okay, is this, just some progressive ideas that aren't founded in research? Well, even video conferencing has some research. Now, I want to talk about the next part, reframing, and hopefully I can give you some visuals. This is what it could look like. This is what it could look like. So I'm asking you to consider changing the question from what or how to who. Who can we engage as we learn? I'm going to be giving you some learning outcomes in whether it's with a mindset to use community engagement or expert learning or organization support or global partnerships. All of these different kinds of connections have kind of a different focus to them, and yet they're all very powerful for engaging students and for student learning. So consider this learning outcome. Students will explore, volunteer, and other new learning experiences that stimulate entrepreneurial and innovative thinking. The very cool thing about this is this was the learning outcome that I was working on today with 300 grade 9 students. This is what we came up with.
Mr. Robinson.
Mr. Barzal, we're your COL teachers.
We're here to explain to everyone a small assignment for your HCE mark.
HCE?
Yeah, Health and Career Education. It's a small assignment that you do for each of the following classes: English, Social Studies, Science, Math, and COL.
Ah, that's right. All grade 9s do it, and it's going to show up on your June report card. So what do we have in store for the grade 9s for COL this semester?
Well, the assignment is called Community Connection. When you connect with someone in the community or across the globe, you're not only developing your ability to network, you are networking. The connection could open up the door to future learning, a place to volunteer, even a job possibility.
The first thing you're going to have to do is find someone that you want to interview. The person should be of interest to you in regards to their job, a volunteer role, a skill they may have, or a hobby that the two of you may share.
Set up a time to connect either through Skype or FaceTime, through email, or even in person.
Some of the questions you may want to ask include the following.
Why are you passionate about your job?
What obstacles have you faced to get to where you are today?
What advice would you pass on to someone interested in what you are doing?
Now, I just want to check in. First of all, did the video work? Were you able to see it? Was it really choppy, or did it come out as all right? It's effective. Okay, great. So we did this. This is actually an older video that I threw in because it's got the Star Wars theme. Our newer video pulled out the idea of face-to-face because we are really locked down here in British Columbia. And we, with this particular assignment, we said, hey, no face-to-face, but we still want you to make that connection. Now, you might come at this and say, well, hey, Robinson, how, like, really? You got 300 students to head out into the community, make a connection with something that you're passionate about, and then write about it on your public digital portfolio so everybody in the world can see. Yes, we've done this for maybe this is our 4th year. And it is such a wonderful experience. The students, at first, they're really tentative and they're thinking, okay, well, who would I connect with? But we've had so many great connections with Haley Wickenheiser, Canadian hockey player, whether it's equestrian, lawyer, the chiropractor, like so many really great connections that students have made. And it's a person-to-person connection. Here's one of them.
All right, so today I'm here with my good friend Ian Stam.
All right, we don't have time enough to watch very much of that, but so this is an example of a community engagement post that a student did. What an awesome thing, pinball. Who knew that pinball would really bring meaning for a student, bring motivation to a student, and really an opportunity for, maybe we can collaborate. Maybe this can help me get a job. So I'm leaving you 2 or 3 thoughts here. How can an activity like this take learning to the next level? Now, can you see me? I think our sharing has stopped, and here we are. Any thoughts? I know that our time, we've got only about 12 minutes left. We might carry on for another couple of minutes, but this is just one of many different kinds of activities. Any thoughts about this kind of activity? Maybe concerns, but what does this kind of activity bring to you? Aubrey, I see you.
Just a curiosity. I work for a fairly private community, for lack of a better word, and so so a lot of that brings up a lot of some of the safety and legality stuff just from my perspective and my role as administrator. So what parameters do you set up with your students when you're doing those kind of roles for a safety perspective? Are you setting out requirements where they go in pairs? Are parents signing off? Or what are the safety parameters that you're doing if you're sending kids out into the community like that? Because that looked like somebody's basement, which immediately made me nervous.
Yeah. Well, always letting parents know. So parents are knowledgeable about this. And then also making sure that parents are part of the dialogue with who the students are connecting with. We also give education around great connections, like what does it look like? What is a safe connection? What is not a safe connection? So and the thing that we try to push the envelope with what we do here at Riverside, because students are out there anyways. They're on their, like if we leave them to be on their own without having that supportive person checking in and seeing how they're doing, whether it's, in social media where we're, like the Lord of the Flies nature of social media. And we can say, well, we don't touch that because it's too scary or too dangerous. My hope, my desire is always to get more involved there and to be able to say, no, actually there's a caring adult in among this that is supporting you. So we have never had a problem, Aubrey, but it's always like, sometimes there's a bit of concern. Our administration has written off on this, so we're good, so if ever something does happen, but really the hope is to be caring, to be involved, and then to help set up our students to make good choices.
That's awesome. Can I follow that up with a
Sure.
quick question? How do you encourage parental involvement then? So especially when you've got the safety concerns at that side, but even in general, when you're trying to encourage like parent involvement and part of that conversation, opening up that dialogue,
Right.
How do you encourage parents to stay part of that conversation and to engage in their child's education?
That's an awesome question. We're very fortunate here. We have public digital portfolios at Riverside. Once again, rubber stamped by the administration. I came to Riverside Secondary because I was doing my own digital portfolios using EduBlog in my own class. And when I found that the school was encouraging students to not just hand in their work, but actually publish their work, I was super excited about that. I thought this is fantastic. It fit, it kind of did all the check boxes for me as far as like, it's very educational. It's, it's very powerful. It's motivational. Allows me to do a lot of the really cool things that we do. And so when we do have parent-teacher interviews and I say, hey, have you checked out their digital portfolio? And often they're like, what are you talking about, the digital portfolio? I'm like, you got it. Like they've got stop motion videos. They've got, infographics there. This is, it's a fantastic way. So my hope for the parents is that when they come, to dinner, it's not, what did you do in school today? But more, hey, I saw the lab that you posted on your EduBlog. Wow, that was really cool how you were able to take a lemon and create light from that. Well, how did it feel to do that? And then the dialogue goes in a completely different direction. Hopefully I answered that question. Any other thoughts? Oh, Aubrey, you want to respond?
I was just going to say, cool. That's awesome. Thank you.
I do want to share, because I was talking with Bo about the expert learning. So I'm gonna keep on going here. I'm gonna rock through a couple more slides. Let's see if I can get this slideshow going for me here. Okay, so when I think about the connections, there are benefits for both the person that we connect with and ourselves. We're giving to, we're receiving from. When we give out to the community, there's more emotional investment. The benefits aren't far away. There's less need for technology, and giving begets giving. When we receive from the community, there's so many great resources in the community. Once again, technology, we don't necessarily need technology. Connections are easier to maintain. Great idea to leverage parents and alumni. Now here, expert learning, here's another learning outcome, and this one's for Bo. Students will develop an understanding of current issues in cloning and DNA manipulation. Why don't you take a second to think, who could we engage as we have our students explore this learning outcome? And this is what we came up with. Hi, Karis, can you see me?
I can see you, yeah.
Okay, and you can hear me. Just wanted to welcome you to our Science 9 class. Here we are at Riverside Secondary. Just a reminder, if I share this with others of my staff, it's Sean Robinson, and this is Karis. And Karis, we're so thankful that you're able to share with us this morning. We've got a few questions, but we're super interested in what you're doing with stem cells. It's great to hear something that is current, like, happening now, because it sounds like the research is just going leaps and bounds. And so super excited to hear what you have to say. I'm just going to have Hannah kind of introduce us, and then we'll give you a chance to talk about yourself.
Sounds great. Hi, Hannah.
My name is Hannah, and my Science 9 class, and I have recently started doing biology. We've been learning about the cells within the human body, and we were wondering if we could just ask you a few questions regarding stem cells in particular.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. Great. Well, Karis, if you could just give us a little bit about yourself and just what you're doing.
Yeah, sounds good. So while you guys are out in Fort Coquitlam, I'm sitting right now close to Science World downtown in a company called Stem Cell Technologies. And I've been working for the company for 6 months. And what the company does is it actually produces products that support stem cell researchers in what they do. So they produce reagents and other components that are important for the research.
All right, so that was expert learning. So many opportunities out there. It's just a matter of reaching out. I'm looking at the time that we have, so I'm just going to kind of open it up. Expert learning is making that connection with an expert. It doesn't necessarily have to be a video conference, but it can be somebody coming into the class. And that is another, that's a way for you to make that connection. And, what I said to Bo earlier, about, hey, do you think a parent's going to say, no, we don't do that here. We don't want, any experts in the field here. I mean, it could happen, but I can't imagine it happening like that. Anyways, those are just a couple of snapshots of what connections-based learning could look like. Just want to check in. Any responses to this? Any thoughts from you? Right. Oh, you're asking me the tough questions. What I want to do is I want to send you someplace right now. I'm going to share my screen because there are so many great resources. This is the question that I get a lot, where it's just like, okay, well, you're relying on your own connections. How can you make these connections? Of course, I did include something where, it was a student connection. Here I go. I am going to share this. So this is my website. And you can get there, bit.ly CBL site. And if anybody, if you have you can kind of put this on a window and you can open up another page, grab a browser. If you go to the Connect tab and you click on Global Partnerships, these are 5 different ways to access other people, to start building those connections. Whether it's Beluga, which actually has a video conferencing platform built in and a way to make connections with different different people around the world. Iron, which is a way to start global projects. I think some of you know about Edmodo, and you might use it as a learning management system, but it's also a great way to make those connections. Empatico, if anybody is working with students from 6 to 11, Empatico is one of the easiest ways to make a global partnership, to make a connection. All you need to do is say when you're available, the topic that you want to study, and the age of your students, and they put it in a, like they calculate it out, and they connect you up with somebody around the world. And of course, Flipgrid. Normally I'd be talking about Skype in the classroom, but Skype in the classroom is no more. So Flipgrid is another way you can do Grid Pals to create these connections. So that is a very helpful way, right? You know, you don't have, it doesn't have to be Twitter. It doesn't have to be, you know, this connection with Karis I learned about at a dinner party. And I just said, hey, oh, stem cells. Can you Skype with my class? And that's what started it there. So that's why I talk about the idea of a connection lens. It's just keeping your eyes open to connected opportunities, and these things definitely snowball. So Bo, there's 5 different platforms that can help you start to build your connection repertoire. All right, folks, we're coming to the end, and I would love to, I'm going to open this what do you call it? This poll everywhere poll. And the way that you get to it is pollev.com, Sean Robinson 404. And just this gives you another opportunity to respond as you're reading, you know, what's next? What kind of areas do I need to, what kind of areas do I need to kind of fill in the blanks for? So that's something. I'm just going to set that poll up right now, and I'll put it back on. Okay, it is activated. And I'll put that back on the screen. So that is the poll. Feel free to put in a sentence, to up a sentence, to thumbs up or thumbs down a sentence, or a question, a thought. And there it is right there. Everybody, just to end, my passion is connections, and I want to let you know every time I share a person with my students, I have meaning, I have motivation, and I have a chance at empathy, a chance to build empathy with my students. That's why I'm so passionate about sharing my thoughts about connections. I hope that this talk has maybe given you just a little bit of a inspiration about how you can connect with your students. And if you are interested in continuing on your journey, everything here is a bit.ly that starts with a capital CBL. So if you know about bit.ly, a shortened URL, if you want to see a talk, a quick 20-minute talk on CBL, go ahead. The other book is bit.ly CBL book. And then I put out an e-magazine, a monthly e-magazine that just lets you look at some of the other CBL stuff going on around the world, whether it's the learning about CBL, using it in the classroom, or even the movement that I consider is out there. So everyone, this has been awesome connecting with you. I hope that this has been something that has, helped you on your journey. It's just a little bit of my journey, but I'm glad that our journeys have connected, and I wish you well in your class. Diane, any last thoughts?
Yeah, it's so great that you modeled this connections-based learning with us this evening. And during the pandemic, I think is a wonderful opportunity for us to push ourselves a little bit, because we have to connect online more than we did before. So maybe that's one of the silver linings. I just feel that it's one thing to read the book, but it's another to actually talk with the author and have that person share, their projects and why they do them. And this was just so inspiring. And I really appreciate that you took the time to come. And I hope that people will go get onto Twitter. And what other social media are you on? Is Twitter your main one? Or do you go on Instagram?
Well, yeah, I'm on Instagram as well. TeachCBL is my handle there. Having a dialogue on Instagram is a little bit tougher. So I love the ways that hashtags can bring people together. In fact, throughout the book, I have these hashtags. My idea has been to use these hashtags to help those people reading the book to, continue the dialogue. So, if you're doing something around expert learning, just, throw it in and like a picture and some words, and then just use the hashtag expert learning if you want to put my handle in there as well, and then we can have a dialogue about that. So yeah, that would be the one Twitter, but also TeachCBL for Instagram, and that's about it.
Well, and I think that if people start to follow you on Twitter, I mean, we have trouble sometimes convincing people that Twitter is relevant, but it is the educators love Twitter. Then, just observing what you do online, I've learned a lot. So thank you very much. And we're going to stay in touch and learn more about that BC curriculum as well. So thanks very much. Anybody else want to say anything before we close down? Lots of messages coming in.
Right. Yeah, no, that is awesome. Hey, thanks, Bo. I appreciate your involvement in and giving me the tough questions. That's good. Hey, and everybody else, I have a couple things. I've grabbed, because I wasn't able to, while I'm kind of hosting, wasn't able to get to everybody's chat, but I've copied the chat so I can take a look at it later. And if it's all right with you, because, maybe you're not a Twitter using person, but I am, if I could just do a quick screenshot, I'm going to tweet this out. So if you're like, oh, not me, I didn't do my hair, then you can turn your camera on. If you're okay with it, then turn your camera off. If you're not, turn your camera on if you are. Oh, a lot of cameras are going off, and I'm just going to, just do a little screenshot. So if everybody can wave. All right. Fantastic. So folks, thanks so much for this. It's been wonderful meeting with you. If we don't connect on Twitter or some other way, it would be just great. I want to hear from Diane what people thought. So if you guys discuss it later in your global education cohort, would love to hear your thoughts. I'm a work in progress. So, any kind of help would be awesome. But thanks so much. You guys have been fantastic.